Zuri sat at the long, shiny dining table, the same one she had grown up eating at, but tonight it felt different. Her parents smiled at her like they were trying too hard, and the air between them felt heavy and strange. The smell of her mother's roasted chicken filled the room, but it didn't feel comforting anymore. It had been months since they'd last invited her home, and suddenly they were acting sweet, asking about her job, her new apartment, her life. Something inside her whispered that this dinner wasn't about love. Her father cleared his throat, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We're so proud of you, Zuri," he said softly. Then he reached under the table and slid a folder toward her. "Just some family support papers, nothing serious." Zuri opened it slowly. Her name was printed at the top, bold and cold. Her chest tightened. It was a loan, $40,000, and everyone had already signed except her. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Her fork slipped from her hand and hit the plate with a loud clink. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Her mother looked at her as if she were being unreasonable. "You make more money now. You should help. It's for the family." Zuri looked at both of them, their smiles, their lies, their greed, and felt something inside her break. They hadn't invited her for dinner. They had invited her for her signature. Zuri stared at the paper in front of her. Her name was printed in thick, dark letters at the top of the page, so bold it almost shouted at her. Her own name used against her. It didn't even look like it belonged to her anymore. The words blurred a little as she tried to make sense of what she was reading. $40,000, her parents' signatures already there, her brothers too. All of them neatly lined up, waiting for her to be the last one, waiting for her to make it real. Her heart started to pound, slow but heavy, like it was warning her. Her father looked relaxed, leaning back in his chair as if this was just another family conversation. Her mother poured herself more wine and smiled the same soft, fake smile she always used when she wanted something. "You make more money now," her mother said, her voice calm and sweet. "You should contribute. It's only fair. You know how much your father has done for this family." Zuri kept her eyes on the paper. Her throat felt dry. "You used my name," she said quietly. "You didn't even ask me." Her brother laughed like it was a joke. "Oh, come on, Zuri, don't be so serious. It's just numbers. You'll be fine. Just numbers." That's all she was to them, a number, a bank account, a name they could sign without her permission. She thought about all the nights she'd worked late, all the meals she'd skipped just to save money, all the years she'd struggled to stand on her own. And now her own family had turned her into their easy way out. Her mother looked straight at her and said softly, "We're family. Families help each other." Zuri looked up then, her eyes sharper now, colder. "Help," she said. "You didn't call when I couldn't afford rent. You didn't help when I was sleeping in my car. And now that I'm finally standing on my feet, you remember me?" Her mother's smile faded. Her father shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. The roasted chicken on the table had gone cold, the wine glasses half empty, the room filled with a silence that felt thick and suffocating. Zuri pushed the folder back across the table. Her hands didn't shake. She had never felt this calm before. "I'm not signing anything," she said, her father's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this, Zuri. Family comes first." She looked at him for a long moment and smiled sadly. "Family should come with love, not paperwork." Then she stood up. The chair scraped against the wooden floor, loud in the quiet room. Her mother whispered her name, but Zuri was already walking toward the door. Her heart hurt, but her mind was clear. For the first time, she saw them exactly as they were, not family, but people who only cared when she could be useful. And she promised herself, right there and then, she would never let anyone sign her life for her again. Zuri sat still, the papers lying open before her like a wound that refused to close. Her brother's laugh echoed across the table, light and careless, as if none of it mattered. "Don't be dramatic," he said, shaking his head. "It's just numbers. You're overreacting." His voice carried the same easy confidence he'd always had, the kind that came from never having to fight for anything. Zuri didn't answer right away. She looked down at the papers again, at her name printed in bold letters, the numbers that chained her to a debt she never agreed to. Her hands didn't tremble. They were steady, too steady. Slowly, she folded the pages, pressing the edges neatly together as if sealing away every ounce of pain they'd caused her. She lifted her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice was calm but cold. "You didn't call when I was homeless," she said quietly. "You didn't check when I was sleeping in my car trying to find a job. But now, suddenly, you remember my bank account." Her brother scoffed, but his smile faded when he saw the way she was looking at him, not angry, not even sad anymore, just done. Her mother rolled her eyes and leaned back in her chair, muttering something about Zuri always being difficult. Her father reached for his glass, avoiding her gaze. The silence that followed was long and sharp. Zuri stood up slowly. The chair creaked against the wooden floor. "I used to think family meant love," she said softly, "but I see now it only means convenience for some of you." She slipped the folded papers into her bag. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Every word landed heavy in the air. Her mother sighed impatiently. "Don't start your little speeches again, Zuri. You always take things too personally. We're just trying to survive." Zuri's laugh came out quiet, almost a whisper. "You're not surviving," she said. "You're feeding off whoever you can find, and I'm done being the meal." She turned and walked toward the door. Her father called her name once, a half-hearted attempt, but she didn't stop. The hallway looked longer than she remembered. Every step she took away from that table felt like shedding years of guilt and pain. When she reached the door, she paused. Her mother's voice trailed behind her, sharp and bitter. "You'll regret walking out like this." Zuri turned her head slightly, just enough to let her words fall back into the room like a quiet storm. "I already regret staying this long." Outside, the air was cool against her skin. The night was quiet, the streetlights glowing softly. She took a deep breath and smiled to herself. In her bag was the folded paper she would never sign, and a plain ticket hidden just beneath it. They thought she was walking away in anger, but she was walking toward something bigger. They didn't know it yet, but this dinner was their goodbye. No one at the table noticed the small blue paper peeking from Zuri's handbag. It looked harmless, just another folded slip among her things. But it wasn't. It was a one-way ticket, a quiet promise she had made to herself 3 days ago. While her parents and brother thought they were trapping her into debt, Zuri was already free in her mind. The ticket was her escape, her new beginning, her goodbye that didn't need words. As her family continued their awkward small talk, she stared at her glass of wine and listened to them argue about money. Her father talked about bills, her mother about sacrifices, her brother about how Zuri had it easy now. Each word made the room feel smaller, like the air itself was being stolen. But Zuri only nodded, pretending to listen. She knew she wouldn't be here much longer. In her head, she could already hear the sound of the ocean in Cape Verde. She pictured the sunlight spilling over the blue water, the peace waiting for her there. Her startup, the one she had built from long nights, coffee, and failure, had finally been noticed. Investors were waiting for her to arrive. Her new life was waiting. Her mother reached across the table and touched her hand. "You should think about the family before yourself," she said softly. "We all depend on you now." Zuri looked at her mother, really looked at her. The face that had once been home now felt like a stranger's. "You didn't depend on me when I had nothing," she said quietly. "Why now?" Her mother pulled her hand back, offended. Her father's voice rose, sharp and defensive. "Watch your tone, young lady. We're still your parents." "I know," Zuri said, her voice calm. "That's the sad part." Her brother laughed again like the situation was amusing. "You think you're better than us now, just because you have a little money and a fancy job." Zuri smiled faintly, shaking her head. "No," she said, "I just learned how to stop being used." The table fell silent. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Zuri stood up, her movements slow but sure. Her father frowned. "Where are you going? We're not finished here." "Yes, we are," she said softly. She picked up her handbag, making sure the plain ticket stayed hidden between her laptop and wallet. "You wanted to talk about my future. I just decided it doesn't include this table." Her mother's voice cracked. "Zuri, please." Zuri turned toward her and smiled, not cruelly, but with a kind of peace that frightened them. "You think you're teaching me about family," she said, "but tonight you taught me about freedom." Then she walked away. The front door closed behind her with a soft click that echoed louder than any argument. Inside, her family sat in stunned silence, not realizing that they had just watched her for the last time. And outside, under the night sky, Zuri's cab waited, ready to take her not just to the airport, but to the life she had chosen all on her own. Zuri stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor as everyone at the table froze. The sound felt louder than anything that had been said all night. Her heart was pounding, but her face was calm. She looked around at the 3 people she had once loved more than anything. Her father sitting stiff with pride. Her mother pretending to look hurt but really just angry, and her brother still smirking like it was all a game. For years she had been the one trying to keep the peace, the one trying to make them proud. But now, as she looked at them, all she could see was greed. Her father broke the silence first. "Sit down, Zuri," he ordered, his voice rising. "You're not walking away from your family like this." Zuri didn't move. Her hand brushed the edge of the table where the plates were still half full, the roasted chicken gone cold, the wine untouched. You can keep the food, she said softly, her voice steady, but not my future. Her mother scoffed, crossing her arms. Don't be ridiculous, you're overreacting. This is what families do, they help each other. You're being selfish. Zuri laughed quietly, shaking her head. You call this help? You used my name, my credit, my hard work, and you call that family? Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. You didn't call when I needed help. You only remember me when it benefits you. Her father slammed his hand on the table, the sound sharp and angry. You'll regret this, Zuri. You'll come running back when the world turns on you. You'll see. For a second, she almost pitied him. The man who believed control was the same thing as love. She looked him in the eye, her voice quiet but firm. No, Dad, she said. You will. The room went silent again. Even her brother stopped laughing. Zuri reached for her bag, slipped the strap over her shoulder, and turned toward the door. Her mother's voice followed her, trembling now. If you walk out that door, don't come back. Zuri paused for just a moment. She didn't turn around. That's the plan, she said softly. She opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The cool air hit her face, and she realized she had been holding her breath for too long. Every step she took away from that table felt lighter, like she was walking out of a cage she hadn't known she was in. Behind her, she could still hear her father's voice shouting her name, but it was fading with every step. When she reached the street, the night was quiet. The city lights blinked in the distance, and for the first time in years, Zuri felt truly free. She didn't look back, she didn't cry. There was no guilt, no second thoughts, only peace. They thought they had trapped her with guilt, but all they did was remind her who she never wanted to become. By the time the sun began to rise, Zuri was already in the sky, sitting by the airplane window with her head resting against the glass. The clouds below looked like soft waves, and far beneath them the ocean shimmered in gold. For the first time in a long time, she felt peace. No one demanding, no one pretending, just silence and the quiet hum of freedom. She took a deep breath and smiled to herself. Everything she had gone through, every sleepless night, every heartbreak, every time her family made her feel small had brought her to this exact moment. Her phone buzzed again on the tray table. She didn't have to look to know who it was. The screen lit up with her father's name, followed by a flood of messages from her mother and brother, each one angrier than the last. You're ungrateful. You'll regret this. We're done with you. She scrolled through them without feeling a thing. The same people who once ignored her when she struggled were now losing their minds because they couldn't control her anymore. It almost made her laugh. Zuri held the phone for a moment, watching it vibrate, then pressed the power button until the screen went black. The silence that followed felt like music. She set it aside, opened her laptop, and logged into her account. The bright blue screen blinked once, and there it was, the final confirmation she'd been waiting for. The deal had gone through. Her startup, the app she'd built from nothing, was officially sold for $2.5 million. She stared at the number for a moment, barely believing it was real. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't from sadness this time. They were from pride, from relief, from knowing she had done it all on her own. The same family that had tried to use her name, her credit, her success, had no idea that she was already light years ahead of them. The flight attendant walked by and smiled. "Coffee, miss?" Zuri smiled back. "Yes, please." Her voice sounded soft, lighter somehow. As she sipped her coffee, she opened her email and began responding to her new investors waiting for her arrival in Cape Verde. They were excited to meet her in person, to plan the next chapter of her company. Every word she typed reminded her that she wasn't the desperate girl they thought they could manipulate. She was the woman who had built herself, piece by piece, through storms they would never understand. She looked out the window again. The sun was higher now, painting the clouds with orange light. Somewhere below, her old life was fading into the distance. The house, the table, the lies. She whispered to herself, "They tried to use me, but they only made me stronger." The girl they once tried to trap was gone. The woman flying above the ocean had no chains left, no guilt and no fear. Zuri smiled again. She wasn't running anymore, she was rising. Months passed, and the world around Zuri had changed completely. She woke up every morning to the sound of waves crashing against the shores of Cape Verde. The air smelled like salt and sunlight, and the people around her smiled without wanting anything in return. Her days were filled with work she loved, meetings with investors who respected her, and quiet evenings spent watching the sunset melt into the sea. She had finally found peace, the kind of peace that comes after walking through fire and surviving. Then one morning, as she sat at a cafe overlooking the ocean, her laptop pinged with a message she hadn't expected. The name on the screen made her heart stop for a moment. Dad. She stared at it, her fingers frozen above the keyboard. For a few seconds, she didn't move, just watched the little dots appear and disappear as he typed and erased, as if he didn't know what to say. Finally, the message came through. Zuri, we need your help. The business is gone. We lost everything. She blinked, letting the words sink in. A small part of her, the old version of herself, wanted to feel sorry for him, but that feeling disappeared as fast as it came. She remembered the night at the table, the fake smiles, the folder, the betrayal. The way he had shouted, "You'll regret this." She remembered how they saw her not as family, but as a bank account with a heartbeat. Now the man who had tried to trap her in debt was asking her to save him from his own. She could almost picture him sitting there, desperate and afraid, waiting for her reply. It would have been so easy to send money, to forgive him just to feel like a good daughter again. But Zuri wasn't that girl anymore. She had learned that some doors, once closed, should never be reopened. She took a deep breath and typed slowly, carefully, each letter deliberate and final. One way means gone. She hit send. The message turned blue instantly, read within seconds. No reply came after that. She stared at the screen for a moment, then closed her laptop. There was no guilt, no sadness, just quiet. For years, she had been the one begging for love, trying to earn it through sacrifice and success. Now she understood that she didn't owe them anything, not forgiveness, not money, not even a conversation. As she walked back toward the beach, the wind caught her hair and the sun warmed her skin. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, glittering like freedom itself. She smiled to herself, whispering the same words she had sent him. One way means gone. Her phone stayed silent. Her heart stayed steady. Zuri had finally taken back everything they tried to take from her, her peace, her voice, her power. And this time, no one would ever take it away again. A year later, the same mahogany table sat in a new home, brighter, bigger, and filled with laughter instead of tension. Zuri stood at the head of it, her heart steady as soft music played in the background. The smell of good food filled the air, but this time it wasn't served with guilt. Around her sat people who believed in her, her team, her investors, her friends. They were talking, laughing, toasting to success and new beginnings. It felt unreal to think that just a year ago, she had walked away from everything that once defined her. The table that had once been a place of betrayal was now a symbol of victory. The same polished wood, but this time it shone under warm lights, surrounded by people who valued her for who she was, not what she could give. She looked around, her smile soft but full of strength. Every voice, every laugh in that room reminded her that she had built this life on her own terms. Someone raised a glass and asked casually, "Zuri, what about your family? Do you ever talk to them?" For a second, the room quieted, waiting for her answer. Zuri took a sip of her wine, her eyes reflecting the candlelight. "They taught me one thing," she said with a calm smile, "never dine with people who feed off you." A ripple of quiet laughter moved around the table, but her words carried more truth than humor. She glanced at the empty chair across from her, a quiet reminder of everything she had let go. Then she lifted her glass higher. To peace, to freedom, and to never settling for less again. The glasses clinked, and Zuri smiled. The girl they once tried to break had built her own table, and this time she chose who sat at it.